Hi there! From the recent broadcast, it appears that the upcoming Gunsmoke battle will feature the new elite boss, Nemertea. In this video I want to go over the abilities and core mechanics of this boss and discuss important considerations for team building. The boss originally released with the CN first anniversary patch, which introduced Springfield to the game, who, alongside Tololo and her expansion key, saw a lot of use on this fight. Since the global version is missing multiple units that were available at that time, team building will be a bit more challenging for us. But without further ado, let's get to it. Like many other bosses, Nemertea has a strong damage reduction buff associated with its stability index. Unlike Deichgraf, whose damage reduction diminishes linearly with decreasing stability, it's all or nothing for Nemertea. So long as the boss is not in stability break, all received damage will be reduced by 80%. Then, one of the main boss mechanics involves a stacking hit counter, which is converted on the enemy's turn to a vulnerability debuff of the same stack count with a maximum of 15 stacks. Whenever the boss receives damage from a character with at least 3 buffs, the counter goes up by 1. Here, Kluke makes her move with exactly 3 buffs to her name. As the ultimate damage goes through, notice the yellow crosshair icon on the boss. This is the stack counter, which ticks up for each instance of damage, so long as the buff condition is met. Note that Petya also has more than 3 buffs as she launches her support action. I'll zoom back in so that you can focus on the counter, as the damage from Kluke and Petya stacks up. As you can see, both of Petya's support actions and Kluke's dots increase the counter, each by 1. After the final assist from Petya, the counter is at 6. 3 instances of damage came from Kluke and 3 from Petya. Between the two of them, with this attack the counter gets stacked to 12, only 3 short of its limit. This points you to one of the most important considerations for team building. Ideally, you want to stack up at least 15 hits per turn on the enemy, assuming you meet the 3 buff requirement. Springfield and Tololo excel at this job, though that option is sadly unavailable to us. You can expect comparable effectiveness from the burn team with its multitude of support actions. Here is one such example, though it includes Shiwa, which is irrelevant for this demonstration. Unfortunately, she puts an identically looking counter on the boss which ticks up by 2 for each instance of burn damage, so please try to ignore that. The counter on the left is the one you need to keep track of. Note that not all team members always have 3 buffs up, so the counter doesn't go up with every attack. Still, with only the first attack from Vector, the boss is now at 5 stacks of its counter. Moving on to the boss turn. You can see that the yellow crosshair was converted to a vulnerability debuff of the same stack count. Each stack adds 2% vulnerability, so fully stacked, this would reflect a damage increase of 30%. This debuff remains effective until the end of the next round, after which the debuff will be updated based on that round's stack counter. Simply put, the hit counter resets at the beginning of each round and gets converted as the boss initiates its action. Next, let's look at the boss abilities. On turn 1, and every odd-numbered round, it uses its first 2 skills. The first attack has 2 different patterns depending on its stability state. If it is in stability break, it will deal physical damage to the nearest and farthest enemy and knock them back by 1 tile. As you can see from Macchiato's interception, this is a single and not 2 separate attacks, making it most likely an AoE ability. Note that Macchiato's interception and Springfield's counter start stacking next turn's stack count, even though we're still on the boss turn. If we jump ahead a little, you see that Kluke's dot manages to do the same. If the boss is not in stability break when using its S1, it will instead hit all allies and knock them back by 1 tile. After hitting at least 5 enemies this way, the boss will lose 10 stability. Moving on, the boss's second skill deals corrosion damage in a 3-tile AoE and creates swamp tiles in the area for 4 turns. Swamp tiles will deal 50% fixed damage to allies ending their turns on them and apply a debuff which lowers the attack range by 2. The ability is used twice, once on the ally with the highest HP and once on the ally with the lowest HP. Let me also rewind a second to highlight the most important aspect of this ability. The skill applies a vulnerability debuff to all allies in its area of effect, which increases their damage taken by 20% for 2 turns. The debuff can stack twice. Importantly, when the debuff is cleansed, everyone on the team gets a stacking 5% defense ignore buff. This buff stays for 2 turns, and whenever a new stack is applied, the buff duration refreshes. Here, you see the second use of the skill, which applies a second stack of the debuff, since the team is positioned so that everyone is within the skill's 3-tile AoE. Note that it doesn't matter if you dispel 1 or 2 stacks, you simply get 1 buff stack when the debuff is cleansed, irrespective of the number of stacks you removed. Here's an example with Michty's ultimate buff Nightmarish Shroud active on some of the allies. Remember that upon being attacked, the buff cleanses 1 debuff. Upon the second use of the boss's S2, the cleanse activates on 3 team members, resulting in 3 stacks of defense ignore for everyone on the team. Due to this mechanic, debuff cleansing becomes a crucial ability for this boss. Michty's S2 cleanses herself upon use, so that's one easy way of stacking and refreshing the buff. Likewise, Petya's third fix key grants her a self-cleanse if she did not move before attacking. Remember to equip the key, it will be extremely useful here. Before moving on, let's also inspect the team's positioning. Due to the knockback on the closest and farthest ally from the boss, you want to position them like this, where Petya can't be pushed away due to the box, and Springfield gets stopped by Michty. Having the team do a group hug is important so that everyone gets hit by the debuff of the second ability. You want to make sure that each ally gets at least 1 stack of the debuff, so that you have a potential target for cleansing. That way, every 2 rounds, you can gain up to 5 stacks of the defense ignore buff. That is assuming you brought any cleanse, of course. Since the skill targets the ally with the lowest and highest HP, you'd want to avoid having both of them next to each other on the front row. On the second turn, the boss starts by using its third skill, which summons a vine, or tentacle if you will, at a random location within 2 to 5 tiles from the boss. If the vine is not defeated on your team's next turn, it will start attacking and apply an attack reduction debuff. The summoning is not an attack, so it does not trigger an interception from Macchiato. Most importantly, killing the vine will grant everyone a 10% attack increase for 1 turn. Then, the boss uses its first skill once more. Since it is in stability break, it attacks again the closest and furthest ally and tries to knock them back by 1 tile. The skill doesn't really matter if your team is positioned correctly. Next, the boss uses its fourth skill, which deals physical damage to all allies. For every 3 targets hit, the boss will inflict itself with a 20% defense reduction debuff for 1 turn. Here, you see the boss with a 30% defense reduction from Kluke and its own 20% reduction. While this mechanic encourages the use of a character like Papasha, she would only add another 20% defense reduction every other turn. Since the stacking defense ignore buff will push you towards fully ignoring the boss's defense, bringing Papasha won't be necessary. Finally, the boss restores its stability every 2 turns. Since it was broken on turn 1 before having had its own turn, it restores the stability now as it concludes its second turn. With that, you've seen all boss mechanics. It alternates between these 2 skill patterns. On odd-numbered rounds, it uses the first ability, which only does the knockback, and the second ability, which applies a cleansable debuff. On even-numbered rounds, it uses the third ability to summon an add, the first ability once more, and the fourth ability, which reduces its own defense by 20%. The first skill is irrelevant, so I'll remove it for simplicity, and the boss's action on the 7th turn won't matter either. That leaves us with the second skill on round 1, 3 and 5, which wants you to have debuff cleansing available. If you are able to cleanse 5 debuffs in total each time, you'll gain 25% defense ignore on each of these rounds. Assuming you manage to refresh the buff, thereby maintaining it throughout the fight, you'll end the match with 75% defense ignore. Even if you manage to reach only 10 stacks for 50% defense penetration, you will ignore 100% of the boss's defense when combined with a 30% defense reduction debuff from Kluke or Chungju and the 20% defense reduction from the boss. The 10% attack increase from killing the Vine and the 20% defense reduction from the S4 are active for only 1 turn, so the biggest damage opportunities will be on odd-numbered rounds, excluding the first turn. Due to the increasingly higher defense ignore value, your damage will increase as the match progresses. If you are able to break the boss within a single turn, the stability restoration will unfortunately coincide with the odd-numbered rounds. Delaying the stability break is not recommended though, as the 10% attack and 20% defense reduction effects are too minor to compensate for the lost damage. As for team building, your key considerations are as follows. Bring a team which can get 15 instances of damage in, while having at least 3 buffs in order to fully stack the vulnerability on the boss for 30% bonus damage. If you're missing 1 or 2 hits, that's not a big deal. Characters with support actions or generic counter abilities work well. A core team that satisfies this condition is a burn squad. Without Andorus or Chihuahua, the team isn't fully operational, but it should be close enough to get a decent number of attacks on the boss. Besides supplementing the 3 with more units that add support actions or triggers thereof, you'd also want to bring a debuff cleanser. If you have Vector's V2 upgrade, you get 1 AoE cleanse for free on turn 6. Other than that, Centaurace is a good option if you have her. Without her expansion key, she still lacks amplification, but she has a lot of debuff cleansing in her kit and also adds 2 support actions to the team, so the synergy is there. Xenia is another great choice. She can add support actions and Blazing Assault. Keep in mind that you will have to equip Coldness common key, so that she can cleanse with her second skill. Since the debuff lasts 2 turns, you can simply alternate her skill between your 2 best damage dealers, thereby applying Blazing Assault and increasing the defense penetration stacks. Xenia is very flexible and can slot into any team, whether burn or otherwise. Then, Macchiato will be a good flex pick for this fight, no matter which team. Her interceptions can add additional hits and help trigger Chongju's support actions. On odd-numbered rounds, the boss makes 3 attacks. On even-numbered rounds only 2, since the summoning is not an attack. Therefore, Macchiato's V2 upgrade will only be utilized half the time, if that is available to you. Assuming the boss is not weak to ice, you could also bring Suomi. She is great at trading stability, and her ultimate implants ice weakness, cleanses debuffs, and overrides the swamp tiles from the boss. She and Macchiato will make a great duo that can go with either the burn or corrosion team. Since you'd probably want to borrow a V6 Kluke to go with the burn squad, you're more likely to pair them with the corrosion trio. That said, if you also have Dushevnaya, you could just as well field an ice team for this fight. Since Dushevnaya doesn't have her expansion key yet, it's not the most optimal team to run. But if you're among the few who try to build 3 teams, this would be your 3rd best option. Finally, and unsurprisingly, the core team most suited for the task is the corrosion trio. Between the V6 Kluke and Petya alone, you're already at 14 instances of damage per turn. Then, Michi and Petya both have self-cleanses in their toolkits, allowing you to benefit from the stacking defense penetration even without additional characters for cleansing. Michi's Nightmare Shroud will also help a little with the buff stacking. Cheetah can be paired with a trio. Her ultimate grants a lot of buffs, and she can modify her second skill to an AoE cleanse via her fixed key. Of course, as noted before, Xenia works just as well with the corrosion lineup, so either option works. And with that we've come to the end of this video. I hope you found this guide helpful and feel better prepared to tackle this season of your favorite game mode. If you have more suggestions for team building or think I've missed an important detail, please share your insights in a comment below. In any case, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.